Tarot podcast explores universal human patterns, called archetypes, by investigating the major arcana of the ancient tarot. We recognize these archetypes because they are present in our own life stories, myths, and culture. Each card represents a stage of the journey for understanding the greater story of our lives.
Welcome to the Archetypal Tarot podcast. I'm Julienne Givot. I'm back in our San Francisco studio, finally, with my collaborator, Cyndera Quackenbush, for our, Cyndera, get this, it's our 20th podcast.
No way. 20th?
It feels like 120th. Still 20. I mean, that's pretty amazing for a couple of fools who started this journey like a year and some ago. It's pretty exciting. But today I'm really psyched to talk about, this is card number 17 of the Major Arcana, the Star, which is awesome, especially after our last one, the Tower. So
yes, I've been really looking forward to a nice, calming, healing sort of card like the Star. I'm really wanting this in my life.
Yeah,
feels good.
Don't have to really brace yourself for this one quite as much.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this card because aesthetically it just is so beautiful. I just love taking a look at this card. So if you have a deck of cards, or it can Google the Star, take a look at the Marseillaise, or the Rider-Waite actually is very similar in its symbolism and the way that it looks at the stage. So we have a naked woman, naked lady. Actually, this is the first time in the tarot journey where we have a very liberated naked person right front and center. We sort of had those imps in the devil card, but they were bound up and that the devil is gone. Okay, we've moved on. We're at the Star now, and she just looks so comfortable in her body, and she's on the edge of a river or lake, and she has two vessels, which kind of is reminiscent actually of Temperance.
Absolutely, a little bit. Yeah, very similar.
But she's doing something different with these two jugs. She is pouring water back into the stream, and but with the other hand, she is pouring some water onto the land. So very different symbolic activity than what we saw in Temperance. And this is not an angel. This is an earthly human being underneath the stars. And we have 7 stars twinkling beautifully up above her head. One central star with its rays. And also, depending on the version you're looking at, a couple of trees in the Marseillaise in the background and a little bird resting on the tree. And there you have it, this beautiful, beautiful card.
And a nice respite from from where we've been before. There's something I just noticed right now that I think definitely in the Rider-Waite version, the woman's leg is actually looking like it's resting on top of the water. I don't know. I mean, she's got one leg, she's kneeling on the land, but it appears, to me anyway, looking at the card, is that she's like has the ability to walk on water.
Oh wow!
Or it's balanced there. It's not actually.
She's like a Jesus woman.
It. So there's, I don't know, for me, I mean, just kind of noticing that it's like this sense of being present, and a part of everything. There's a lot here, so we want to go into like the symbolism of what we're seeing, or reverse back and kind of talk a little bit more about the previous stage of the journey and kind of, what this means to us when we get here.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we just came from the Tower, which was a crumbling down of assumptions of everything you've built up to this point, your ego, all of these things that the Tower could have represented, and it fell down once again to the ground. There could have been a sense of humiliation there. And what do we have here, where we have this very peaceful card and the Star right afterwards?
Yeah, the sense that we had talked about in the Tower as it being most likely difficult, like shocking, but underneath that sort of like the idea, the wisdom that you're being liberated from something, and it's something that kind of, given your druthers, you'd never want to let go of, but it's kind of been taken out of your hands. It's been shocked out of you. It's like the lightning bolt that hits and changes absolutely everything.
Yeah.
To me, this is like the Fool on this journey is kind of like laying in the grassy field after being hit by lightning, going, "What just happened?" You know, like feeling at once that sort of the liberation, or that like letting go of a lot of things that were kind of you didn't realize were weighing you down, kind of like not quite yet able to articulate what did just happen, but the symbols of this naked woman, it's a symbolism of being both at peace but vulnerable at
Mm-hmm.
the same time. So the Fool is sort of like, I think this next stage is being able to see that for the very first time, that you can be both vulnerable and at peace, because you just got hit by lightning. You just had a major change. It's like that we talked about, the universe sort of kicking you in the ass a little bit, that
Mm-hmm.
now we're, this, everything about this is natural. It's about harmony. It's all of the senses just innately knowing what needs to be done and being with it, which you're not going to have if you were weighed down by all those things that the tower basically took away from you,
That's
or that you
right.
let go of.
And I think that clothing becomes a huge symbolism in that. The clothing is like the persona, or whatever you built yourself up to be in society. But this brings us back to our very human essence. If we were all naked and had no possessions, you wouldn't be able to tell what class you were from, what titles you have, and so forth. This really brings us back down to the basics, and where we can be humble, but even though there's that humbling presence, that we feel liberated too, that we can be free in this card. Absolutely.
And that I think you come to it in a more poignant way because you've gone through a storm. It's kind of like that, the time after the storm, where there's like peace and clarity, and recognizing that, for me anyway, we talked about the grace and the chaos of the tower. There's a moment to really kind of regenerate and appreciate and remember that grace is not deserved. You can't ask for it. You can't give it away. You can't deserve it. It just is. There's just this sense of looking up at the stars and all of that, that there's a freely available grace, and not to get kind of like too kooky on that, but like it's that moment that you can't, it's indescribable, that there's a calm now with this stage that is available for us to contemplate, or just be with this space. Like, this card doesn't tell me I need to go do anything right now. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it's a
tranquil.
it's a bit of like what temperance was, a little bit like after the death card,
Mm-hmm.
temperance came, remember, and the hero didn't have to be totally conscious when that recovery was taking place. But in the star, there seems to be a little more like it's a similar thing. I think that there's some movement in the unconscious waters, but there is some water being poured on land,
Mm-hmm.
which is a wonderful symbol of things that are unconscious in the unconscious pool, as it were, coming out onto the surface for rejuvenation. So we've been talking about this slow but sure trend towards rebirth, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen overnight, but that the soil is getting wet, and from the wet soil, new things can grow.
I think I want to really highlight what you said about the symbolism of water, and in the way I take it too, is the unconscious. It's a lot to do with emotions. Whenever I look at water as a symbol, I think emotions and I think unconscious, and because water seeps in, like there's no place it can't go, given enough time and enough water. It will soak in, and that, to me, the unconscious is the same way. You can't
Mm.
stop it. You can try to dam it, but it will get through, slowly but surely. And seeing it being poured, what is happening, in this picture, because the water's coming out of both pictures and going back into the water or back onto the land. And the way that I kind of took it when I first saw it, in looking at it this way, was, oh, where'd the water come from to begin with? Why is it in this picture? And also, could the person, the woman in the star card, represent part of that channel, that the water is kind of, she is a part of what's going on, and not just the servant moving the water. It's like it can kind of come up and go through and come out of her.
Right, and this woman's relationship to the water is reminiscent of the strength card that we explored at an earlier time, where and in that stage, we were getting in control of our appetites and of finding inner strength and finding our relationship to that. And in this card, the woman is really working with these powers of nature, and yeah, she's not a servant or slave to it. What other things are you noticing about this stage and her relationship to nature in this sense?
I think there's because a lot of people call this the hope star, or that sense of kind of coming to what's real, what is your real desire. That because it's such a natural image, there's nothing real. There's very little about it that can be concocted or of human hands, and maybe those pictures would be the least natural things about it, because they're presumably made by a human, but everything else in it is very a natural state. But that reaching back to the strength card, that being comfortable with the wildness, being comfortable having it all be sort of a part of the setting, I think is important to look at. And I'll loop back into that when we talk about sort of the film references and that part of the journey
Well, what
a
you've
little
just
bit.
said is really interesting because it brings up this big conversation about humans' activity and how can it be considered unnatural? Like if a human shapes something, is that
Mm,
apart from nature, or is that because it feels like she's very much in tune with the
yeah,
process of nature. She's
yeah.
helping the fertility of the land, and how a larger question that might come through from this card is how can we be in accord with nature in our lives? I think that's a beautiful big question right there.
And remembering that everything is connected. We can
Hmm.
kind of go through that there. To kind of go back to me, the imagery of the fool sort of approaching this stage, or realizing that, like, oh, what just happened, yet there's this sense of sort of harmony and peace, coming upon these symbols and this creature, this woman who's just so clearly very comfortable being where she is, that what we can ask, like, how, what now, what is truly, what are my hopes after all of something was taken away from you. You have this great shock that you're like, oh, you're reapproaching things, and
Yeah.
you're reapproaching it in both an unconscious and conscious ways, where you have to really, what is really guiding me? What is my
Yes.
real desire?
Your real
What
guiding star. You have to get retuned to that.
And the fact that the word desire itself comes from the word star, or it
Wow, that
comes
is
from the
so
stars.
amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's how are you keeping your star in sight? What is your star? And also too, I mean, the symbol of the star in and of itself is guidance. People have always looked at stars as being our guides. The three
Mm.
wise men, the eyes of Mithras in that myth of when the eyes opened, you could see the whole cosmos. The stars there. There's so much there in terms of the star that I don't think that we think about. We use it as like, oh, movie star or
Right.
TV star in different ways.
And just
So
also practically in the sailing a boat, or being out amongst the stars before we had complex navigation systems. It was the stars, and it actually makes me think of a wonderful documentary I saw in the theater last week, which was called Maiden Trip, and
hmm.
it's about she's 15 when she ends up going on the journey, but she's the
Um,
15-year-old Dutch girl that
yeah,
goes completely around the world alone in a sailboat,
yeah.
and it's such an extraordinary story, real life story, because she completed it in 2012. And I think actually her story really applies to the star, because she knows absolutely in every part of her being that she wants to do this. And she gets met with all of these threshold guardians, the Dutch government and so forth, that don't want her to go, and are wanting to take her away from her father for even thinking to allow her to go on this journey. And but she is so strong about wanting to do this that she goes for it. So she knew what her guiding star was, and she was clear about it at this very, very young age. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful documentary. I very much recommend it.
That, I think that's a great reference, and the idea that keeping your star in sight, just to look at that as like, okay, how does that relate to me? What is that in terms of a part of a process? Well, guess what? You have to have faith during the day that that star is going to be there, and you only see it
Hmm.
at night, right?
Ah,
So
interesting.
there's, and also, I mean, just by the nature of stars are mysterious, they're twinkling, you can't always see them. They're in reality, in the literal world, really, really, really far away.
Yeah. And some of them are already dead, right? When we look
When
at
we
them,
get to
they,
see them, so you
yeah,
can, if
by the
you
time we see their light.
look at it there, and then you go back to, well, what can this mean for me
Yeah.
post tower, if we're looking at this in kind of like a linear fashion
Yeah.
of what just happened.
And they keep us company throughout a very long night or a very long winter. And as if, you know, there's this big black blanket above us with all these holes in it. We can see that there's light on the
Mm.
other side. So that's really, really beautiful.
I think just being able to recognize and see the stars now, see this as symbolic of hope, of really going, what is my real desire here? And how the previous stage of being liberated there is really serving our ability to see what is really, really important. And I think of that, the quote, you know, the barns burned down and now I can see the moon. Sort of like,
Right.
you couldn't have, because in our modern times, you know, we get caught up with so much complexity and distraction that we will very easily and naturally layer over what our true guiding star, what our true north is,
Yeah.
because of those. And when those liberating moments, when it really felt like stuff was taken away from us,
Yeah.
that we do find out what's really important, what's present for us.
This conversation is making me remember something James Hillman said once, is that there's a lot of pressure or emphasis today on what you want to be and who are you. I am a writer, I am an actor, I am a banking person, or whatever. And but there's so, or children are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's very, very different from what is it that you love doing? What do you actually just love to spend your time doing? So I love writing. I well, I don't know about the banking bit.
I love banking. I love money.
I like money, and making money is very good.
I love Excel spreadsheets.
I love Excel spreadsheets.
I do.
So,
I like Excel. I do.
oh, you do?
I do.
It has an organizing influence on you, does
It
it?
does, actually.
That's good. It sorts the brain out.
It does.
Gets you
Project
clear on your
management,
guiding
yeah.
star. That's very good.
It can. So I'm standing up for this.
Well, actually, we need people with a lot of heart and intuition and all of that working with spreadsheets in this world. Definitely.
You know,
yeah.
Microsoft Excel is my guiding star. I don't know. It helps me, you know, get organized. That's right.
But back to this card in the sense of its elements, I want to point out here that this card seems to be the most well-rounded of all the cards so far in its earth, air, fire, and water, which has also been related to Jung's 4 personality types, and just a general vision of wholeness is starting to appear in our journey. So we've got she's got 1 foot on earth, 1 in the water. We've got the air. There's a little bird in the back that's reminding us to have a connection with both the sky and the earth. So we've got the air element with the wings and the feathers, and then the fire of the stars. There's something very promising and beautiful for our poor, beaten down fool here.
This card's a very generous card too. I mean, there's just a wealth of everything in it that I see there as well. And what are the things that we can ask ourselves, in this journey, really, I think have a lot to do with that, like getting the greater understanding of what your true north is. And it's a very sort of like, like what am I going to allow to guide me? What are those, deeply held beliefs or relationships that are really, really guiding me?
Yeah.
In that coming to that place where you're able to see on a more visceral level and an emotional level our connection to nature, and that we're all a part of one big like ecosystem and universe.
Yes. And what are our truest riches in our own personal lives and as a people on this planet? What are our true resources? Our relationship to that with, what does our ego want is very different from what that deep guiding star
Mm-hmm.
is. And I love this Serbian proverb, maybe you've heard it, which is be proud because you're made of the dust of stars, but be humble for you are made of the dung of the earth. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that balance is really important in our living our lives and keeping us from building those towers too high and getting disconnected from the earth,
Mm-hmm.
but then also appreciating that, yeah, we're made of something infinite and part of this universe. And I've always loved that phrase as something that kind of keeps me humble, but also makes me walk with a deep-seated confidence in my step as well.
I only really wanted to talk about one film in this because it to me was so appropriate, and I popped off at the end of the last podcast where I was like, I gave a little homework assignment to if you wanted to see the film The Beasts of the Southern Wild, which was nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, didn't win, and then the lead actress, she was nominated. She was what, 5 when she did the role, but she was nominated for Best Actress for it. So it's out there, people can watch it, and it really to me had a lot to do with the previous cards as well as the themes that you were just talking about, about hope and the both honoring the fact that we come from the stars, we are part of this big universe, but we're also have this physical presence, we're meat, we're beasts,
Mm.
and that all of it is actually important and it's all interconnected, and that was a lot to do with a lot of what was going on in that film, which has an unusual hero to it. It is the hero's journey. It is that mythopoetic, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey happening through it, but with this tiny little girl who's 6 years old. And it's so there's spoiler alert here if you haven't seen it, but the opening scene where our heroine is this girl named Hush Puppy, and the very opening scene, you can see her making this little nest out of mud, and she's pouring water on it. And she's got the
Mm.
bird, and she's got the chicken and the bird, and she's making the nest for it, and she's trying to put it in there, like her connectivity. She lifts the bird up and puts it next to her ear so she can hear the heartbeat. I think very much is that the theme of the card of the star is knowing that you are connected
Mm.
and a part
Mm.
of it. There's just so much there. I think with the woman who's sort of a teacher in it, she's telling all these little kids, we're meat. We are on the buffet of the universe, she says, and we learned that in the tower, and we learned that periodically through this journey, is that sometimes you just, there is that base level idea of, this physical part of us is just meat. The themes of chaos in the film and how chaos can kind of pull us out of our sense of separateness, where we realize we need each other and the community and the denizens of this town or this area that they live in called the bathtub. They live in chaos. They embrace chaos.
Mm.
They have a wildness about them. This beastiness that they embrace. That most of us think is crazy, but that's the norm for them. You can consider them outcasts, but they're very, very much in touch with nature and even the junk that they live in. So it's fascinating to watch their embracing of the wildness of the world, and that's why I think of the beast card, because there's these mythical beasts that are sort of throughout the film that the little girl talks about. So you watch it and you think you're afraid of them, but more towards the end, she has this relationship with that wildness that she honors, and it honors them, and eventually towards the end they bow to her.
Mm.
So it's beautiful in that way, and you can see themes of the hangman, of death, of even the devil, the addiction. The father's an alcoholic, and the desire of this innocent girl. She says at one point in this almost random way, she says, "I want to be cohesive." She's 6 years old. She doesn't even know what the word cohesive is, but she gets it on a certain level where
Mm.
she's really the theme of bringing everything together, and the masculine and feminine, the mother father of it is really, really beautiful. And
I think that's an amazing theme for the Tower Star duo is the question, what needs to fall apart so that something new can come together?
mm-hmm, something that I have a sense is that was there all along, but we're just able to see it now.
We have to
You know?
remember it,
Yes.
refind it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like the stars. Stars aren't new. They're about as ancient as anything. And
Mm-hmm.
there's, and I'll put more in the show notes about kind of like where I see the map, how the tarot journey, the hero's journey mapped together for it. But there's a quote that I just think is really beautiful about being connected and understanding, where we are with things as we gaze up at these magnificent stars. That experience, and it's towards the end of the movie, and Hush Puppy says, when it all goes quiet behind my eyes, I see everything that made me flying around in invisible pieces. But when I look too hard, it all goes away. But when all goes quiet, I see they're right there. I see that I am a little piece of a big, big universe, and that makes it right. To me, that's just kind of heart of where we're standing at this stage, and how it's really important to honor the previous stage with it. Because like even I
Mm-hmm.
said in the last one, I get superstitious about those big changes and that chaos and that thing. I was like, I don't want that to happen. But as we stand here gazing at these stars, you're like, and I needed that. I needed that shock. And we can, just as this little girl is standing there, after, her whole universe has changed, with her father passes away, to be able to witness that and be really completely present in that moment,
Mm.
is such a gift.
And the theme of water and the cleansing that emotions play in this film
Mm-hmm.
is so evident. That the fire is there, the masculine is there. Be a man, be strong, and but that both of them, the father and the daughter, when they come together, are needing the feminine, the emotional,
The water,
the
the
water to come
mm-hmm.
forward. Mm-hmm.
And water it's one of those. It's a character in the film, and that I looking at water as being a symbol of emotion, and how because there's a flood basically that happens. This storm comes down, and they are being kind of unmoored by it, and they have to deal with all of this water. And that we oftentimes will, just by nature of our world, where we kind of have to put our emotions away sometimes, but we're not so skilled always at bringing them, letting them come back through. And that the symbology of this journey that they take with this flood happening and everything that comes from it, and how they come back to that at the end. I think, I don't know, I see a lot of what's happening for the star and being completely connected to nature. I don't know, I found it was a great film, and I was really happy to watch it again the other night, and see it from a different perspective, because it can be a disturbing film. Everyone that I had spoken to had said, oh, you have to see this film, when it came out about a year ago. And then I was like, oh yeah, it looks really pretty, I want to see it. And other people were like, yeah, it was a great film, but I can't talk about it. It was really difficult
Mm-hmm.
to articulate, because it can be very affecting, this
Mm-hmm.
film. And I think it's something that's, it can be hard to articulate the sense of the stage of the star, because it's more about emotion, it's more about being present than it is, I
Yeah.
guess. It's experiential, very experiential.
And I could imagine Joseph Campbell being very interested in this film for the reason that it's I think one of these new films that's beginning to examine our place in the larger world, that what's happening with ice caps and the changing of our environment is affecting us and putting into question our place in the world, our place in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
and our relationship to it. So these are very, very big questions, and I think they're encompassed beautifully by this card, by the star. So we welcome meditations on this, thoughts on the movie that you had. Julienne assigned some homework last time, so if you did it, or if you have thoughts about that, we'd love to hear them. And we're very much for crying and tears and weeping, so it's very cleansing. So we encourage you to do that after this podcast. Or anything that comforts you. After that falling tower, Julienne and myself are currently very cozy in some Dutch slippers, sent from our friends from Holland. So thank you very much, or the Netherlands. I should be. I should be more correct on that. I like to say Holland because I think it Sounds
I grew
better.
up calling it Holland, so you know.
We're Americans over here.
So
howdy world.
Yes, and thank
yeah.
you to our Dutch friends for our slippers. I might actually get a picture of our slippers so we can put them up on the info sheet about this. So, you know, gifts are accepted. We're basically saying we do this for free. The stuff's all free. So if you want to send us things, you can certainly.
We will wear them.
Oh, absolutely.
During the podcast, and we swear we're honest about what we're wearing.
Yep. We're wearing more than just the slippers, but
they're
on our feet.
We are not naked like the Star Lady. But if you want to, never mind.
So I think it's been lovely once again. I'm super happy to not only have these awesome slippers that were sent to us, but to be back in San Francisco, and we are going to be talking about the moon next time. So more water, more emotion, more unconscious. We're going into sort of a different phase,
and more lunacy from your favorites,
lunatics, right here,
Julienne and Cyndera.
Yeah. So, if questions, ideas, email us. We love hearing from you. atpodcast@archetypist.com, and hang in there for a second, because right after this, I'll give you the web address for all the show notes. Thanks so much. Until next time, ciao. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to become a part of the Archetypal Tarot team by becoming one of our patrons. Our patrons are awesome. So if you're interested, visit tiny.cc/tarot for more information and the awesome rewards for joining. That's tiny.cc/tarot. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Archetypal Tarot Podcast. For more information on the show today, you can go to archetypist.com and just type in the words "the star" in the search bar, and you'll get to the page that's got the full show notes. Join us next time when we discuss card number 18, the moon. Until then, take care. Thanks.